Hello, my name is Brian Lewis, and I'm an instructor with JTNS. Today, we're going to talk about good communication flow, key to safe work. If you haven't done so already, please pause the video, talk about any near misses and/or accidents you've had, then simply press play again to continue the video. Hopefully, there's not much to discuss and that everybody has been safe since your last JTNS meeting. So, as we prepare to talk about good communication flow key to safe work environment, we're going to cover three main areas. The types of communication that we use, which can range for a lot of different things, how the flow of communication typically moves throughout an organization. We'll talk about vertical, horizontal, and diagonal communication. We'll also talk about the barriers to communication, which all of us experience both in our work life and our personal life. Having said that, communication is important, obviously, as we do job briefings and talk about matters that have to be handled. We want to make sure that we do the appropriate thing and the safe thing and work safe. So communication is important to many aspects in our life, especially safety at work. So the three basic types of communication that we use are written communication, verbal communication, and nonverbal communication. Each of these types of communication that we use have positive and negative aspects to them that can be useful in dealing with our people that we work with, our coworkers, as well as dealing with people in the community in the service area when they approach us while we're out in the field or if they come into the facilities and have an issue that they need to discuss. It's important that we realize that people will say more uh, than they really intend to with their nonverbal communication. As we talk about written communication, it can take many different forms. Employee handbook gives us the rules for employment and sets out rules for both workers as well as the employer. We also receive memos, work orders are a fact of life, whether they're completed on a computer or an iPad or whether they use paper. And of course, there's equipment manuals. Equipment manuals in particular are really important for safe work. Typically, they're in the glove box of any over the road vehicle, and they should be attached or carried on backhoes, track hose, and other pieces of heavy equipment. We should refer to these. They tell us how to operate the machine safely, as well as the limitations that we have to deal with the machines. All of these types of communication are important. We also have verbal communication, whereas written communication tends to be a little bit slower, tends to be a little bit more uh, purposeful for long-term use. Verbal communication is when we need to get information to and from people quickly. To write an email, to write a memo, someone's not going to get that very quickly. Sometimes we have to have a face-to-face conversation. We have to have conversation over cell phone. We need to practice active talking where we speak in specifics and practice active listening where we speak up and ask questions about any kind of language we don't understand. Like I said, this tends to be for more urgent or information needs to be passed in a quick manner and not so much a less timely manner. Nonverbal communication is really important also. What I would tell you is that somewhere between 60 and 80% of all information that we can see and or send is nonverbal, and it can be voice inflection, it can be body language, it can be hand gestures, it can be many different things. And what I would say is somewhat trust your gut. If somebody approaches you and your gut tells you that they have ill will or bad intentions, your gut may be right. And it's important to protect yourself when we're out in the field or even in the workplace. Just be aware and notice how people use their hands. And if you can see their hands, these can be telltale signs of what we need to know for nonverbal communication. So, communication can flow many different ways. There are vertical, horizontal, and diagonal flows of communication. Now, these words may sound more like 50 cent or dollar type words. As soon as we talk about them, you're going to say, oh, this is pretty straightforward. So, when we talk about vertical communication flow, we're talking about going up and down the organizational chart. When we talk about horizontal communication, we're talking about talking to someone that is on the same level as you in the organizational chart, whether it's to people on your crew, your same crew, or whether it's across crew leaders, that type of thing. Diagonal communication tends to be when we speak to someone in another department. An example would be someone in a water department working on a job or at a job location at the same time someone from the electrical department is going to be there. And how we approach that job and how we approach how we're going to handle that job and not get into each other's way, but in fact help each other is important. So it's really important, diagonal communication is, because we don't use it very often. And when we do use it, it's important that we do practice active talking, i.e., talking in specifics, and active listening, where we ask questions. The little bit of time we take to do those things will go a long way into clearing up gray areas and us being more efficient in helping each other out as we communicate. Once again, vertical communication is up and down the organizational chart. I think most of us typically think of someone coming down the organizational chart and information flowing to us, but it can flow up the organizational chart just as well and should just as well. It's really important that we realize that people above us cannot help us do our job better if they're not aware of some of the challenges that face out in the field. So it's really important that we take our time and make sure people hear us, whether that's face to face, verbally, whether it's over the phone, or whether it's in an email or some other type of written communication. Like I said, generally the organizational chart, you have general manager, CEO, president, utility board, whoever is at the top of that chart, and they disseminate information or send information down to department managers, vice presidents, eventually to foremen, crew leaders, supervisors, and to the crew. Like I said before in the last slide, it's also important to realize that information flows up that organizational chart also. And that is just as important, that information flow up, because people in the organization need to know what's going on in the field. They need to prepare themselves for any kind of problems, as well as help people in the field with any problems they face getting their work done more efficiently. Horizontal, we've talked about, and typically when we talk about horizontal communication, it's almost always verbal. Occasionally there's emails or text or something like that. But for the most part, it's between people face to face when we're having either a large job briefing at the beginning of the day or a particular job briefing as we get ready on the site to do work. So it can be between people on the same crew, between leaders or supervisors or foremen. If you have multiple crews on site, it can also be between department managers when you're preparing for particularly large work environment or an environment that's going to be time consuming, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to do this thing the right way, the best way possible. We've spoken about diagonal communication, and of course that can happen between a manager in one department with a supervisor, crew leader, or foreman in another department. It can flow up and it can flow down. The key here is it's not in the same department. So that word diagonal really means you're reaching across departments to others so that we can coordinate and be efficient, as we've already said, which is really important. We don't want to be working on top of each other and causing problems. Typically, if we do not coordinate that really well, what ends up happening is a lot of ill will, a lot of irritation, and that does not work out well for morale or the work environment. So we want to do the best we can to take care of that in a timely manner and do it well. So some of the barriers we have to communication, just to mention a few, we have some physical barriers to communication. We have technological barriers to communication. These tend to be more hardwired or wireless type technologies or work environments. Then we have more human type barriers, people with certain attitudes, people that have personal um, problems with each other, personality conflicts, so to speak. So both physical, technological, more humanistic types of barriers where some people have poor attitudes, and of course, personal barriers to communication. We'll try and talk about each of these in a little bit greater depth. So, when we talk about physical, believe it or not, noise enters into that conversation because noise is a physical hazard. When you have things vibrating, great amount of noise from heavy equipment, engines, and just being out in the field in general from cars, that becomes a barrier to being able to correctly hear what's being said. Cell service is not always great. Unfortunately, even in modern life, we still have areas where we do not have cell service or good cell service. Sometimes time is a physical limitation. We really have to work hard to get all the words and all the communication we get in. The medium that we choose, I've spoken about emails, text, and face to face. The medium we choose can be a real barrier. We don't want to send emails when we have to talk to somebody quickly and urgently. There again, technology, emails, and text are dependent on being read in a timely manner, typically aren't the best way to talk when you have to talk quickly or urgently to someone. We've already mentioned cell service, and that is important. We also, as technology increases or its use increases in the field, people have computers, iPads, things like that. And so, for that technology to work correctly, of course, you have to have some kind of data package, and you have to be familiar with all the buttons and all the slides and everything that goes with modern technology to make sure it works the way you want it to or the way you think it should. So those things from the design of the UI and everything else is important. When we talk about a more humanistic type of barrier, a lot of times we're talking about attitudes. So I'm sure everyone has someone that's energetic, somebody that really wants to get the job done quickly. That is both a good attitude as well as a bad attitude, because you move too fast, you may inadvertently create hazards. People that are distracted can create a big hazard. We need to be focused on what we're doing. There's all kinds of considerations with attitudes, all kinds of considerations, things that we have to be aware to a certain degree of what's going on in each other's personal life. And so that's a big deal, and we definitely want to take that into consideration and help our coworkers out and not be adversarial about it, but be real. Sometimes personal lives have an impact on our work lives. We are just human beings. People have babies, which in general terms are a joyous time. And we also have some sad or quote bad times. Sometimes people we know, people we love, people pass away. And those, like I said, typically tend to be bad times or sad times. And we need to know this, because a lot of times when people have both joyous and tragic moments, it's difficult to concentrate on the job at hand at work. And as coworkers, we want to be or think about the human nature of what we're doing and help our coworkers focus on the task at hand, so one, they can do it safely and do it correctly. So we want to do that, do our work safely and do it correctly. So in review, communication flow is important to a safe work environment. We have to be able to talk. We have to know what to be able to expect of other people, whether they've been on our crew for a long time or they're new to our crew. Whether we talk vertically up and down the organizational chart or across to people on our crew or other foremen, or if we have to talk to somebody in another division, it's important that we use active talking and active listening. Pick the correct media. If we're going to send emails, if we're going to send text, remember those things are dependent on people reading them. Cell phones, data, information all depend on the kind of data plans we have and cell service and all that stuff. And it's important that we take that into consideration. Nonverbal, be aware of people and think about their intentions. Communication is absolutely important to safe work environment, that we clear up any kind of gray areas with active talking and active listening, that we make sure that people understand what we're trying to communicate. And that can be frustrating for everybody involved. So we're going to have to give people a wide berth and realize we're just human. I appreciate you all for your time and attention. If you have any questions or any comments, please ask your JTNS instructor. They will try and answer your question. If it's a question they don't know, they will do their best to find that information and get it to you. Once again, thank you. Have a wonderful day and try to be safe. Thank you.